second. All right. Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to our second Facebook Live Wednesday with Justin and Jay. If you're just tuning in, we're launching Justin and Jay. It's basically Jay coaching me in leadership as I build an international nonprofit. So you get to hear the things I'm struggling with, the things that are going well, and you can learn also. So thanks for tuning in. And Jay, how are you today?
I am doing well. Enjoying a brisk day in Minnesota. There was a kind of faux spring and now we're back to, it feels a little almost winterish like for a few days, but enjoying time because spring is just around the corner for us.
Yes, we're same in Kiev. We are slowly getting up there in our temperatures, and but then it'll tank down on us again. But I rebel. I'm like, I'm not wearing a coat. It's now I'm ready for spring, so I'm not wearing a coat. It's done. So hey, I wanted to jump in right away to we started talking last week about leading versus managing, and I had shared with you last week how I was starting to struggle with realizing that as we build our team, I'm still managing a lot. Like, I'm really involved in the day-to-day operations. And I'm really realizing that even more as we've had some tumultuous family situations, like, just stuff happening where I've been distracted from the work. And then I found there's these gaps that people are waiting on me for a lot. And I was just processing what we had learned about last week about managing versus leading, and really thinking, like, how do I do this? How do I keep going from this next step to go out of this manager day-to-day role? Well, I guess it's the three, right? It's practitioner, or I don't know what you would call that, the kind of the doer of the tasks.
Yep.
To the managing. Okay, so individual contributor to manager to leader, and I just wanted to, I think where I would like to start is, I've realized, like, how do I go from my vision that I see so clearly into clearly communicating that enough that somebody else can take that and run with it. I feel like that's a step we're missing.
Sure. Well, and so that comes down to some communication, and the tendency is we tend to think, well, if it's a communication issue, we just need to pile on a lot more information, and usually people get lost in that. So part of it is actually what we call closing the communication loop, and that is, the problem with communication is the illusion that it happened. And so we have to, in the process, ask whoever, whether it's to an individual or to a group, we need to ask them, what is it you heard? What is it that you know and understand about, in this case, vision? Same thing with goals or strategies, or even just delegating an assignment. Ask them, what is it you understand is you're committing to, or what we've agreed to, or what I've said. Sometimes we can do that if we're in person, just verbally in dialogue. Sometimes it's in an email. If we've sent something, asking at the end, would you please send back what you understand to be what I'm asking of you? If it's an assignment, or if it's the case of the vision, what is it you see? What will it look like and feel like to you to carry out this vision in your work? And getting them to communicate back. Many times they'll be communicated back and we go, yep, they've got it. Other times we're going, ooh, they're 30 degrees off, they're 90 degrees off. And I need to come back around again and say, hey, no, this is really what I mean. So sometimes it's just in that communication. Lots of times it happens in delegation, where you're talking about, how do I hand something off to somebody, this assignment, this responsibility that I'm asking of them. And so we've talked some in the past about this idea of having a clear why, a clear what, and then engaging them in the how, coming alongside them based on their experience and skill. So that clear why usually is the stuff of vision and purpose, or some particular values we want to see live out.
So, and you touched on this last week where, we talked a little about how we manage our calendar as a leader and making sure we're not in the day-to-day grind so much, but we are starting to get into that vision, people leadership versus I forget the other one now.
Well, we could tend to call it manager of operations.
Okay.
It's the tasks and activities, the whirlwind of the week of moving things forward and getting them going. And so, again, in smaller organizations or entrepreneurial startup type things, yes, the leaders are going to be involved a little bit more in doing the managing and getting things going and wearing multiple hats. One thing that looks bad is when a person wears more than one hat at the same time.
Right, exactly.
So we need to put one hat on at a time and do that, and then take it off and put the other hat on. And that's why when we talked about, even as last time, this idea of leading and managing, it's really an and. When you're in a management position of an organization, whether it's entry level of the organization or at executive level of the organization, there's this dual role, the role of a manager of operations and of people, but it changes the percentage. It's not always a 50-50 thing. In fact, typically moving up in the organization from entry level management to executive management, what happens is you're delegating more and more of the managing, the activities of the work, organizing, scheduling, coordinating work, and the resources, and executing what needs to be done. More and more of that you're delegating, and then but you're still responsible as a leader for the outcomes, but not to the same degree. But you cannot delegate the stuff of leadership, that is, of leading people. The idea of establishing a vibrant culture where people thrive and contribute their best, and the stuff of change. Leaders are focused on change. What's the current reality? What's the desired future? What steps are we taking to move there? And so, does that help kind of differentiate? Because both are needed, but you have to decide which hat do I need to be wearing right now, and over time, you need to be delegating more and more of the managing of the operations so that you can spend more and more time in leading people.
No, that's good. And I realized this week, as I'm looking at a week or two where I'm going to be really involved in some family personal stuff. I remember, I've been studying and doing entrepreneurship stuff for a long time, and I always remember this, I don't know who said it, but basically this thought of, if you're working in a business and you step away and the business stops running, you don't own a business, you own a job. You have a job that you're working in. When you step away, it stops. You have a successful business when you step away and it keeps going without you, or even better. And I realized, and again, I don't want to be too hard on myself because we've only been growing a team for a few months, so I don't, I don't expect to be able to walk away. It's all, it's all new. I get that, but my vision is that I want that, where I step away for family stuff, or I step away to vision cast a new initiative or something, and everything doesn't just fall apart when I step away. So from your perspective at this point that I'm at, how do you get to that next level where I even see myself already, because I'm such a visionary, I'm already seeing myself start to dream to the next phase from where we're at now. But then it's easy for me to lose initiative on momentum on where we're at now. So how do I get to that next level of where help me. How do I get there? What's the next practical steps to move forward towards that ideal vision I have to make that happen?
Well, a couple things are playing into it. It's not a single silver bullet type thing,
Sure.
but it's multifaceted. Part of it is raising up others that can step into it, and it's the combination of their character and their competence and so on, and growing those relationships so that people are knowledgeable about it, and then what you're talking about, having a clear vision with you and aligned to that vision and the mission. And many times it's even more than just the vision, it's actually the mission and the values of the organization, because the vision will play out. If you accomplish the mission and the values, the vision will play out from there. So, but getting clarity in those things so that they understand it, but having the right people in place. And that's why it is so much harder early on, because you're developing people, you're growing people into those positions, and it does take time. Anything that has to do with people and relationships is not efficient. It's about being effective with them. It's an organic process when you're working with people and relationships. So with that, but looking at, so what you talked about, this phase 1 to kind of phase 2, part of it is thinking through what are the outcomes, or what are the things we're after here in phase 1? Because if we're not at those places, let's not move too quickly out into phase 2 and let phase 1 wither, as it were, and then we're not in a good place to be launching and carrying out phase 2. So part of it is saying, in this phase 1, this first area, and like you said, just a few months forming the team, what are the outcomes or results I would be expecting to be kind of the norm and have a rhythm and a cadence and that we're doing, and defining those and kind of getting those to those place. But I really like that you're alert to the fact that I can't put systems and processes in place that are dependent on me, the leader. And so that advice, or what you had read earlier, is really helpful. You know, are you just inviting people in to help you with your job?
Right.
Or are you inviting them in so that you can hand it off and you can release, what we call supervising or releasing people. And you do have to early on do a little bit more supervision to where you get to clarity in the idea of mission and values and the vision and the clarity in that, and getting to the place where people understand things and can carry it. You've delegated well, and they've demonstrated that they can do it. But in the process, we always want to say, hey folks, it may feel like I'm supervising a little bit more right now, but my goal is to release you into this. And so they understand where you're headed with this. And then so you may early on be supervising a little bit more, which feels a little bit more like managing. But remember, you always manage things and you lead people. So when it has to do with people, you got to lead, and don't get those two mixed up. Thanks to Dr. Grace Hopper, a famous consultant and rural admiral in the Navy, would always say, you lead people and you manage things. Don't get the two mixed up. So I
like that. That's great.
Yeah. So in that is, I would say, define what are those outcomes that you expect to kind of say, hey, phase 1 is really humming, and we're ready to move into phase 2. Yep, as a leader, you want to be thinking about phase 2, but you want to ensure that these outcomes, this is how we're going to measure that we've accomplished phase 1.
Okay, I like what you're saying there, and that makes sense. And I think, so you're saying, well, first of all, I get what you're saying in terms of like the people. I think it was Jim Collins from Good to Great. He said, first you got to get the right people on the bus and the wrong people off the bus, and then you can kind of figure out everything else. So, like, I feel like, over the past few months, we have a good core team, especially like our marketing team is incredible. We have our full-time staff and his wife on board here, and they're awesome. And we have volunteers. I feel like we have a really great group of people now. Mm-hmm. So practically, say on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis, month-to-month, how do I start to then shift? Like, what do I do to hand over vision and mission and clarity and expectations and outcome to them, so they feel like, oh, so I go on a trip for 2 weeks and they're like, awesome. I know exactly what to do. Like, what do I practically do to get there?
Sure. Well, first of all, it's don't be guessing what where they're at, but rather be asking. And so asking them where they're at. So you may do that in your one-to-one involvement with them. But if you're conducting a team meeting, it's good to do at those team meetings also, just saying, hey, what is our core purpose as a marketing team? In that illustration you have with your marketing team. What's our core purpose? And actually, I would start one level above that. What do you understand is the mission of Legacy Refuge? Okay. And then what's the core purpose of our marketing team? First of all, you want to make sure those things are in alignment. But then in that, and if people can write it down, now obviously you're typically to do, you're not in the same room, you're doing video calls and so on. But you'd ask them to write it down, and you kind of go around and let people read what they wrote down. Well, the core purpose of our marketing team is, and they read out. If they can do it fairly quickly, if people kind of aren't scratching their head and taking and go, boy, I need more time, then you kind of know, well, this probably isn't very clear. Now, if people kind of get it down and they read it out, and it's very similar, it doesn't have to be identical, word for word, but very similar, then you say, now we have alignment, and we have a level of confidence that people are using this to direct, to inform and influence what they're doing. If people can't write it down, can't recite it, can't state it back, you've got to start there to get clarity in those anchor points. Or maybe with your marketing team, what's our number one strategy or approach? Or maybe you have a combination of, here's a couple strategies we're playing out. They've got to be able to communicate those back to you, whether it's in a one-to-one meeting or in a group as a team, and finding out. So you're not guessing whether they know about it or are beginning to understand it. And then go one step beyond the reciting of it to what does that look like? What is that informing? What is that influencing? That strategy, this core purpose we have as a marketing team, what difference is that making? How is that informing your decisions? What is that causing you to do differently? So you want to get back, but it has to start with kind of reciting and knowing what it is. Then asking about, okay, what have you done in the last week? Where has this made a difference? Where has this informed this strategy, this approach, this process we're using, this step-by-step thing we've adopted and said this is how we're going to do it? What difference is that making in how you make choices?
So basically, you're saying then in a week-to-week basis, I need to really be setting time to clarify that vision, the why, and even the strategy, so that it's written in a clear way that I can easily send to them, right? Like, so, for example,
the starting point, yes.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And actually, that I've said this, I think, to you before, but I do remember Judah Smith. He's a pastor from out west in Seattle. He has a big church, and he said he tries to spend his time on vision, verbiage, and values. You know, casting vision, creating verbiage that communicates the values, and then and the values. So I do, which the good news is I love doing that stuff. I just sometimes feel like I don't have time. But I do, it's like, okay, I know some of the people on our team are real capable of this, but I do feel like it goes back to the beginning. I have all this stuff in my head that I think sometimes I think I'm communicating in conversation, but it's not getting all the way there. For them to feel like they understand it enough, they're released enough to then go and do that. So then I do feel like a lot of times I'm in. And again, it's a new team, so I expect to be involved more. But right now, I'm really engaged in like, hey, do this next step here. There's this next step, next step. And then if I'm not telling them a next step, it stalls on some of the things we're doing. Some is starting a little, but it is. I'd love to get to that point where it's, like you said, they understand the what, the why, the how, and then they're just coming to me for other, touching base or whatever, but they don't have to have me engaged on a
Yeah.
day-to-day basis.
Yep. So, kind of a stepwise approach to this, and we may want to pick this up in the future. There's kind of an approach called Supervise To Release. But this idea that, yes, right now, it's dependent on you for them to take the next step, or it feels like it's going to stall. But I would start now moving toward with the person, what do you think is, or what would you recommend the next step to be? And so they get used to thinking about the next step.
That's gold right there. Say that again. I think that's good. It's simple but good.
Yeah, because you want to look on a continuum. I don't know that I can find it real fast here, so we may want to use it when we review this next time we're together. I'll pull up a diagram. But if you think of a continuum, and I know some people will be listening to this rather than seeing our podcast or this Facebook Live session. Yeah. So I'll describe it. So in case you wouldn't be able to see it anyway, if you look at a continuum, kind of going from left to right, supervise on the left, and actually beyond that is the idea of control or micromanagement. And you obviously don't even want to go there. You want to go move a little bit to the right, and you want to be in the supervise area. And then release is the next area, and then the furthest to the right is abandonment. The funny thing is sometimes it's called empowerment. And empowerment's a good thing, but for many people when they hear that, they think abandonment because their supervisors, their managers or whatever empowered them, and all they did was throw stuff over the wall or out the door to them and walked away.
Right.
So those are the extremes: micromanagement on the left, abandonment on the right. But in between there are two segments called supervise and release. And so on the kind of the left of center is supervise, and we're not talking politics here, but left of center is supervise. And in that, you're moving from where you're giving people instruction on how next steps, and then you begin to ask them for recommendations. And what do you think the next step is, or what's the possibilities? And you're moving to the right, even within the supervised area. And there's several levels there. Then you begin to transcend across, as it were, move across into releasing, where you actually say, hey, you go ahead and decide what to do, and you just get back to me when you decided what you're going to do in this area. Or you set up, go ahead and do it, but I need you to get back to me as soon as you do it and report to me what you did. Okay? You're beginning because they're taking the initiative now. And then you were getting to the place, well, hey, we meet every week or a month or whatever it is. Hey, the next time we meet, you let me know what you did. So you're moving toward more and more, less initiating what's going on, and they're just kind of reporting back what's happening to the point that you can really release them by just say, go do it, and I'll expect it's done and done well. So that this movement on this continuum from left to right called supervise to release. Okay. And so that's you're way on the left supervising because they need the next step instruction. So to move a little bit further along that continuum and supervise is say, hey, here's what we're after. Make sure there's clarity on what we're trying to accomplish, because that's your responsibility. What's the why and the what? What is it we're after? And they see that, and they can describe that. Here's that communication loop back. Here's what we're here's the outcome we're after, the deliverable, the result. They need to be able to articulate that back, which is the kind of stuff of vision, and back to you. And they say, okay, yep, we're going to do this campaign. We're going to do this kind of interaction. This is what we're going to get out there. We see that. Then you're moving and saying, hey, rather than me telling you what to do next, you come back with a recommendation or two of what you're going to do to help move us there. And as they begin to move to the right there, right of center, now you're getting toward release. Now they get used to the idea, okay, I can come up with the ways to get from starting point of the assignment into the finish of the assignment.
That's great. That's really helpful. And I'm thinking about a specific situation right now where like we want to kind of redo this whole email thing on this new email platform, and I have the person I want to help do it, and that was kind of my thing. I don't want to tell her all the things I wanted to do because that's a lot of time for me to do, and I don't really know all the things. So I like what you said there, like first clarify, make sure she understands what it is we're trying to accomplish, why we're trying to accomplish it, the outcomes we're looking for.
Yep.
And then try to tell her, okay, yeah, based on that, it would be like, okay, based on that, do some research with this program, and you tell me what you think's the next steps are to reach this goal.
Mm-hmm. Good.
Right? Okay.
That's right.
Oh, that's good.
And so, because one of the things, it's a fascinating, almost counterintuitive thing. When you tell someone what do you want to accomplish and then tell them all the steps to accomplish it, who's responsible for the outcome? Who's accountable?
Yeah, I am.
The manager, yeah.
Yeah.
The leader is. Because they've stepped everything out. Now, early on, again, if somebody's very new, doesn't have any experience in it, you might have to step through the things. But as soon as possible, you want them to have the responsibility and the accountability for it, and so you want to encourage them. You come up with how you want to accomplish this.
Great.
But what you said was so true. They need to articulate back, what is the outcome we're after? What does the result look like? Even though you've a clear why back here, communication is an illusion because we thought it happened. So you do want to state it clearly, but then you need to have them state back what they understand the outcome to be, the result, the destination.
And I think too, and tell me if this is a situation you do that, but you had told me one time, or many times, that, when people are involved in a decision, they're more bought in. So in a situation like this where, it's not like, it's different than like a super direction, like vision for a, we're doing that barista training school, right?
Yep.
This summer for aged out orphans in Kiev, if you're listening. So we're launching this summer, 6-7 week aged out program, doing barista training. I had this super clear vision. And I got people involved in like how, but the vision, I was like, here's what we're doing, guys. But for this, I'm like, I want this to happen, but I don't know. I don't have a super clear vision on. I just know like this has to happen for our organization. I like this new system. So in this case, is it better to meet with that person and say, hey, what do we want together to see happen? Or is it better for me to just bring that to them?
The more you can involve someone or the group, the greater buy-in or commitment they will have to it. In other words, this isn't just somebody dumping assignments on me, or this isn't somebody just transferring busy work to me or things like this.
Right.
So yeah, if you can involve them even in bringing clarity to what is the vision, what is the outcome, what is the result, the deliverable, yes, you're much further ahead if you can involve them with that rather than you going out to the mountaintop and coming back with the tablets.
Right.
This is what it is. It's actually involving them in saying, here's what it could look like. These are the possibilities. And there, you want to practice some things of don't stop with the first good answer. Get different ideas. Maybe even do some scenarios. Here's one scenario we could do to end up with this, or here's another scenario we could go and we could end up with this kind of outcome, and so on, and begin to look at, and you get far stronger, better solutions when you begin. Don't stop at the first good answer. What are other possibilities? What are alternatives? Could we marry this idea with this idea? And a hybrid of those two things comes up with a third alternative that's even better.
That's great. Well, this is so helpful, Jay. Thank you, and for you guys listening, thanks for listening. And we're going to continue every week, every Wednesday at the same time. What is it? 1 o'clock Central.
It is 1 o'clock Central.
Okay, so 1 o'clock Central, 9 o'clock Ukraine time. We're going to do a Facebook Live like this where Jay's coaching me on the things I'm going through so that it can help you. And we'll also turn this into a podcast that will launch in a couple weeks to a month. It will launch. But in the meantime, Jay has written an amazing leadership journal. It's totally free. but it's a week by week journal. So you can go to justinandjay.com/journal. The link is in the description. If you click that link, you just put in your name and email, and every week you'll start to get an email that's really helpful for your leadership. So thanks for tuning in, you guys, and write questions if you have them. Email us in a question if you have them, and we'll see you next week.
Take care. Thanks for joining us.
God bless. See you next week. Bye, guys.